holding me, will bear my burdens too. Singing I go along life's road, praising the Lord, praising the Lord. Singing I go along life's road, for Jesus has lifted my load. All right, we'll have a word of prayer, and then Brother Trevor, you'll come. One thing I do want to let you know is it's a blessing. Miss Stephanie is going to be starting to do nursery for us, so as you invite families and such, let them know we have a nursery, and Miss Stephanie will be taking care of that for us Sunday mornings, and so that will be a blessing. And I know right now we just kind of have Eden back there, and then sometimes when Brandy has Shona, I knew it was something with an SH, and I was like, I can't remember, but Shona. And so that'll be a blessing, so that we have a nursery available for that. And I appreciate Miss Stephanie willing to do that. And she'll also, as she's needed, step in and help with the kids' ministry if they don't have anybody in the nursery. But I appreciate that. So make sure as you invite people, let them know, hey, we have a nursery available to you. And that'll be a blessing because, well, we want to have families with children and families with babies coming and families, that I appreciate all of you guys. Let's go ahead and pray, and then Brother Trevor, if you'll come. Lord, thank you so much for this day. We thank you for all that you have done for us. God, I pray that you bless the service this evening. We thank you for each person who's able to be with us this evening. Thank you for the opportunities that you are giving our church, Lord, to kind of revitalize some of our church ministries that we have, God, with the nursery. Thank you for Miss Stephanie being willing to oversee that for us. We thank you for each of the ladies and Brother Robbie, Lord, who are working with our children's ministry. Lord, as they transition with the new services next week, Lord, just help them, Lord, in all these things, because, Lord, again, it's kind of like, well, we've always done it this way, so to do something new can be a little bit hard. But, Lord, I pray that you'd help it be a smooth transition, even with our Jesus League starting in the morning, next Sunday morning. Let there be a good, smooth transition. And, Lord, thank you for all those who are willing to help and work with children. I know that you think that children are so important because you said, suffer the little children to come unto me. And, God, thank you for a church who sees the importance of children. Lord, bless Brother Trevor, Lord, as he comes to speak with us this evening and teach us from the book Hook, Line, and Sinker, Lord, as we continue to look at the importance of our families. And God will thank you and praise you for it. In Jesus' name, amen.
Once it's there, it's usually quiet. It's getting it there. That's it. Well, I got to take my jacket. Oh, I already told you about the little pastor that kind of helped get us. My wife and I used to laugh because he always knew how good the preaching was by how much came off. Because he'd get excited as he was preaching. Sure enough, the jacket would come off, then the tie would get loose, then the top button came undone. Then the cuffs came undone, and he started rolling up the sleeves, and we'd always say, he's got to start wrapping it up because he doesn't have anything else to take off. It's going to get wrong in church. So I want to act like I was a little better than I was, so I'm going to start taking my jacket off. We have to bear with me. I'm a little out of practice. I haven't done this in a little while. You all don't know, I've been doing teens and teaching kids for quite a while now. Matthew, come and give me a hand. Thank you. Trying not to breathe on this thing. There you go. Can you pass those out? I always give handouts. I don't know if it helps you, if it doesn't. If you want something to scribble on, you have something to scribble on, that'll work for you. I know that's what I did as a kid in church, but I always, you guys don't know, I always make myself a handout, and the reason I do that is on track, and it helps me, and it always helped me in church to have something to try to fill out. So I had to force myself to pay attention. So that's why I give those out, and hopefully see if I get off track, y'all can yell at me and be like, pointing at that, and let's get back on track here. But I appreciate Pat asking me to come up and help him do this. I think he got me, this curriculum was actually really designed for teens. And so I think he suckered me into it for teens. But actually, it's really good. What we're talking about tonight, of course, is the family. And the way the devil really is attacking the family. This curriculum, hook, line, and sinker, is toward teens, but it's actually directed at the entire family. There's something we can all get out of it. As Pastor went over last week, we talked about Satan. He was talking about, of course, hook, line, and sinker, talking about fishing. How Satan uses lures and lures of sin and is attacking us individually. And the very last thing he talked about last week was exposing the enemy. That realized, how much safer would it be if I could become a fish, go jump into the water, and be like, hey, get out of here. No, this is real. They're going to get you. And that's what Jesus did for us. That we want to expose that enemy. And I get to finish up tonight, but I get to talk about living preemptively, which is what someone's talked about many times in the Bible, how we need to preempt ourselves, to protect ourselves. I'll be honest, I just read the title. I hadn't even read the information behind it, and the first thing kind of came to me was the whole armor of God. That realized we're talking as a Christian to put on the whole armor of God. If you look at the whole armor of God, almost all of it's defensive. There's only one offensive piece to it, and that's the sword. Everything else is defensive. And being preemptive sometimes just being defensive, putting our defenses up, guarding ourselves, covering ourselves from the attack of Satan. So one of the things we're going to talk about tonight is, of course, the attacks of Satan. Now, this lesson focuses on living actively against Satan tactics, anticipating his attacks. Now, you all know me. I spent 20 years in the Marine Corps, so I start thinking attack. I start thinking tactics and how things go, and that's probably a lot of what I'll kind of lead into tonight. But every home needs parents and young people who live proactively protect themselves against the spiritual enemy of sin. We need to protect ourselves. Satan's going to come after us regardless. It's not a matter, it's like when you have your children, you go out or you learn to, you get your license. The very first thing they tell you, not if you get in an accident, when and how severe. Well, hey, you're a human on this earth. Satan's going to attack you. You want to be a Christian, he's definitely going to attack you. It's just a matter of when and how severe. What it's going to do to us. So I'm going to talk a lot tonight about the family. And the reason I'm going to talk about the family is the very first thing, the very first trick of living preemptively starts in the home. And the very first thing we want to look at, the parents are the critical link to living preemptively, preemptive or proactive. Preemptively. Parents are linked. Parents are the key to spiritual health, to nurture, and for the stability of your children. The link between Christianity and the Bible and Christianity of tomorrow is parents teaching their kids on how to live and how to live this preemptive life. Many times, I don't know why it is, and it's something that we have in our society. You realize we spend all these times, we raise our kids, we have the little kids, we have little Eden in here running around, and I'll do it in the morning with Xander, and we'll come out here and we'll take offering. We spend all these time with little kids, okay, here's how you need to act, and here's how we need to do, and let me make sure, let me teach you how to dress yourself. There's nothing more amazing than a 6-year-old getting dressed themselves. It's awesome, right? Teach them how to dress, how to act, how to do all these things, and somewhere magically, they become teenagers, and all of a sudden, in American society, we just take our hands off. Oh, well, they're a teenager. They don't need me anymore. They can walk, talk, speak. It's like, no, they need you worse than ever. Right. They're going to start facing more temptation, more attacks from Satan, just the biological and physiological changes they're going through. They're not equipped for. And somewhere as a society, we thought, well, I made it, so they'll figure it out. Well, I always look at people like, well, you made it and you figured it out. How many stupid things did you do?
Right. Yeah.
And yet, we're like, well, we'll just let them do it too. We have this idea that we need to take our hands off, when in reality, our kids probably need us more in their teenage years and young adult years than they ever did when they were children. They need us differently, but they need us more. Really what kids want, they need your time. They need your time and attention way more than they need your money or provisions. Look, there was a famous saying in my parents' house that I grew up with that didn't hurt me at all. It was, we can't afford it. Anyone ever hear that one? Mom, Dad, let's go do this. We can't afford it. No. I didn't have all the coolest toys. By the way, I went to school with a bunch of the rich kids. And I still remember my mom, we were at soccer, I always played soccer, and some of the other parents were talking and how embarrassed my mom was because they were talking about they had gone school shopping. And they were talking about how much they'd spent on new school clothes. So they had spent all this money on new school clothes. Now, I can't remember the dollar amounts because obviously it's changed a lot. But what it was well, we're only spending this much. We spent this much on school clothes this year. Of course, that wasn't including tennis shoes. And what they had just spent on school clothes was like double what my mom spent on us to include shoes, which were the most expensive thing you could buy, and being kind of embarrassed by it. But it was like, the funny thing, I look back in my childhood, we didn't have money, but I had my parents' time, I had their attention. As I said, I was at soccer practice. They never missed a single game. They made an appointment to be there. They made it a business to be part of my life. It's funny, what we learn from children as little kids, what they want is your time. That's all they want is your time. How many people see little kids, Mom, watch me. Watch this. Watch this. Yeah, all day long, right? Yeah. Hey, look at me. Look at me. They just want your time. They want your attention. About the newest toy? The box. They'll play at the box. What they want is your time. The funny thing is, Pastor talked about it this morning. Talked about our precious commodity. You realize time is the most precious commodity we will ever have. It is the one thing that you can never get back. You can't make more of it. Money's not a big deal. They print it every day. But look at our government. They're printing trillions. But if I spend 5 minutes with you, that 5 minutes is gone. It's never coming back. How many more 5 minutes? I don't know. Only God knows. It's over. One of those things we need to realize, parents are the key. Teenagers need their parents. We need to make ourselves a permanent part of their lives, even if they don't want us there. Because the reality is your kids always want you there. They may act like they don't, but they do. I deal with these teens all the time. One of the biggest things you find out, and you find out as any type of a youth leader or any type of Boy Scouts or any time you work with youth, the one thing they want is the fact that you sit down and you're ready to talk with them and spend time with them and ask them about their day. It's a huge difference. Kids want your time. Want to know that you're vested in them. Parents are the link. Now, some of us, our kids are grown. We have grandkids. We have people in their lives. We're all in this church. We're part of these kids' lives. I said just little thing. Xander helping me with the taking the offering. If y'all don't know, that just happened one day. One day when I get offering, he's like, I'm coming too, and he ran up. I said, okay, you're going to help me. Well, the next week I got up to do it, and he was already standing there. I guess this is becoming our thing. But guess what? He's in church every Sunday. He's always excited to be here, and he's always looking for where we're going to sit. It's a great thing. It's a neat thing. Teenagers need their parents. And the real thing teenagers need God's truth. See, if we're spending time with our kids, that time getting involved in their lives and teaching them and listening to them, which, by the way, parents, that's the number one thing we don't do, myself included, is listen to our own kids. I'll just give you a little bit of 101, especially those of you who have teenagers. I was your worst nightmare. I was a recruiter. You know the number one way I got kids to come and join the Marine Corps? I sat and talked with them for about 3 hours. I'd ask them questions, and then I'd go, and let them talk. By the time after 3 hours talking to me, I knew more about their kids than their parents did. Because they wanted to tell someone. I was just willing to listen. We can learn to spend those time with our kids and listen to their needs and talk to them. We get to teach them God's truth. Well, hey, here's what the Bible says. Well, Mom, Dad, why do you have all these crazy standards? Here's what the Bible says. Here's why. Let me tell you a story about the dumb things I did when I was your age. Let me warn you about the things I don't want you to do. See, the whole reason we need to do this stuff is parents are the link. I'm trying not to breathe into this thing. Sorry. It's hot up here. Parents are the link, and kids need God's truth. Period. And most of the time, we're talking about this stuff. That's why we're here to talk about it. This is what we need. Because the whole idea that truth is in crisis in our culture. One of those things I looked at, and I thought it was funny. It's the way these things always work. Because Pat used this verse this morning. By the way, this verse is not part of any of the curriculum. This was me reading it and said, hey, that's a cool verse. I want to use it. It's the same one he used this morning, Hebrews 10, 24 and 25. It says, let us consider one another, provoke unto love and to good works, not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together as a manner of some is, but exhorting one another, so much the more as ye see the day approaching. I'm trying to get through that message. Now, I know that verse is talking about the church, and it's talking about how we're supposed to come together. Tonight, I'm actually going to talk about it that way because I look at it this way. That verse is talking about the church. But also realizing the whole design, when God talks about the church, he also talks about the family. He talks about the family and the organization of the church, and I'm the head of the church, and the church is my bride, and give my life for it, all these things. And then we talked about the family, how the family is to run, how it's supposed to be the father teaching the kids and the woman running the home, and you're supposed to bring the children up and teach the things of God. See, the whole idea was, we had church. That corporate worship, but you had your family worship where it's going on all the time anyway. Fathers, our job, teach your kids. What are you supposed to teach them? About Christ, about the words, about the scriptures, about all these things. It's supposed to be reinforced over and over and over again. And the reason I say that truth is in crisis in our culture, one, we don't do it. We just don't do it. But two, the American family has fallen apart. See, it's one of those things, we talk about these things that the devil's going to use. It's one of his tactics. One of the number one tactics that I personally believe the devil's using nowadays is he said, I'm going to destroy the nuclear family. I'm going to destroy the family that's been called out in God's word, the way God designed it to run. Because if I can destroy that, that's God's design how to get his word into everyone, how to reinforce it, how to raise good people. Well, I do get rid of that family piece of it, and the rest of it falls apart. See, because spiritual principles are foreign in the home. See, spiritual principles are foreign in the home. They're not being taught in the homes anymore. It's gone away. There was a time, even here in America, in the United States, you could go just about anywhere, and in any home, there was a Bible, the family Bible, sitting, and people actually knew what was in it. They'd actually read it. You could go around and see Scripture. You know, as our government, the very first textbook that was written for the American school, do you know what it was? The Bible. Commissioned by our government to be taught in every single school. Now you have to fight. You go and bring a Bible into school, they're like, you can't bring that. I believe I can. I can't teach it, but I can bring it. The kids can bring it. I had to go in the high school here because one of our kids that was here said I can't bring the Bible for my reading. I was still active duty, so I showed up in uniform. And I said, what's this I hear that this child said they couldn't bring their Bible? No, that's not what we meant. Okay, thank you. They fully meant it. But I had the reason spiritual principles are foreign in the home. See, because one of those things we look at just in my time growing up. Anyone remember Ward and June Cleaver? Leave it to Beaver, right? The quintessential American family. I'm still trying to talk my wife into bringing me my slippers every night. Still haven't worked ever. Ward and June Cleaver are gone. They got replaced by Homer Simpson. Father's bumbling guy, doesn't know what's going on. Doesn't care about anything spiritual. Not teaching the kids anything. So that's been replaced. The reason I say that spiritual principles are foreign in the home, the American family is falling apart. Some statistics nowadays. And I can tell you, see, 1950s, Warren June Cleaver. It was approximately 5% of white kids were born into a single-parent home. Today, that's 40%. Really want to have fun? Look at being a black American. Black American used to be 40%, is now over 70%. If you see a black man or woman, 70% chance they're born into a single-parent home. Gets even worse. In New York City, a black woman is more likely to have an abortion than she is to carry a baby to term. Over 50% of all pregnancies, women have an abortion. The family's falling apart. The morals that created the family fell apart. I put this in here, just kind of an odd thing. It's no wonder the American family is dysfunctional. We live in a country where you can legally murder a child in an abortion, and simultaneously, at the same time, you can also stand trial for murder if you kill a baby inside of a pregnant woman. Figure that one out. No wonder the American family is dysfunctional. The country's dysfunctional. It doesn't make any logical sense. Sorry. We kind of outsourced the raising of our children. It's moved away from the family. We take it, we've given it to school teachers. We send them off to school. Now, I'm not saying it's a horrible thing. People do get busy. It's hard. We've relied on other people. We relied on the village aspect. Problem is, the village is just as poisoned. We've outsourced the raising of our children, and then spiritually we've tried to pass it on like, well, we'll learn it all in church. Exactly. That's one of those, and I had it set for later, but I'm going to tell a story anyway. I remember we had a family used to come, and we had a young man, and he started getting, like many teenagers, kind of started falling away and got into trouble in the home. And I remember his mom complaining, and this goes one of those to the social networking, blasted on social network, and it was one of those times where I had a hard time keeping my mouth shut. Because I can't believe he would act like this. I mean, he was raised in the church. And I looked at him like, I got him for an hour a week. And you weren't there. My job is to reinforce what he's learning at home. He wasn't getting that stuff. And that's what we've done. We've outsourced the raising of our children to schools and to society, and to a society that's hostile to biblical truth and actively works to undermine those things that we find in the Bible and to undermine biblical truth. Look at the entertainment industry. One of the reasons I talk about the entertainment industry and that Warren June Cleaver have been replaced by Homer Simpson, they've turned the father into someone that you respected, you came to, and you came through knowledge, to a bumbling oaf that no one takes seriously. Now that started before the family started falling apart. Then the family started falling apart, and we said, well, why is this happening? Because you've had a steady diet of, watch any sitcom, anything's been put out, and see if there's a sitcom out there that has a father that is a good, strong figure in a TV show, in any sitcom. They're almost all gone. 9 times out of 10, they're just an ongoing joke. And then our kids don't respect their fathers. We're like, well, why is that? Well, we outsource the raising of our kids to the television. The Bible's been eroded away in our society and in Christian homes. We've allowed I wrote that wrong. Relativistic approach to truth. Now, the reason I say that, you ever heard of relative ethics? That's one of those ideas that, hey, people play this game. Hey, is it okay for me to go into the grocery store and steal food? No, that's awful. But what if my family's starving and I stole a 98-cent can of dog food? Would that still be wrong? The Bible says, yeah, it's still stealing. Do I understand why you did it? Yeah. If they're going to starve, I'd probably do it too. Does that make it right? No. It's still wrong. But in many Americans' eyes, they say, well, because of the circumstances, that makes it okay. That's a relativistic thinking. Well, many people have this relativistic approach to truth, and they've tied that in to the Bible. Well, everything's relative. No. Read the Bible again. There's very little that's relative in the Bible. The Bible's written in black and white for a reason. But everything in there, there's one way to heaven. Well, I think if I'm a good person and I do this, and I've given money, I've done all these things. I mean, I'm relatively, compared to who? I'm a great person next to Jeffrey Dahmer. True. I'm not a very good person next to Jesus Christ. Who we're comparing ourselves to? Who is who? Even if you show to say. I say the truth in Christ is the foundation that parents lay in their homes is very important. The foundation that parents lay in their homes. My generation grew up with a culture that rejected Bible truth. Now I can say that. I can say, honestly, some of the baby boomers in here, that's some of you ahead of me, all right? I was Generation X, all right? We're kind of like the lost generation. You always hear like the millennials yell, okay, boomer, right? That old joke. And then I'm here in the middle going, hey, does anybody care about me? Oh, wait, that was our old attitude anyway. No one cared about us to begin with. Generation X, we just totally rejected the Bible. Many of us were raised in church and around families and people that cared, and we just said, no, I don't want anything to do with it. And because we grew up saying, no, I don't want anything to do with it, we have no foundation. We're raising the next generation. Well, if I have no foundation in it, how am I going to teach my kids? And what we've done, and this is just a statistical thing, you read, see me write things. I write a lot of statistics. It's always interesting to me. But a statistical thing is most kids there's still today, a lot of kids grow up in church. Statistically, as they become teenagers, they go out of church. I'll say that I'm a child of statistics because I grew up in church. I always tell everyone I had a drug problem because my mom and dad drugged me to church on Sunday morning, Sunday night, to choir practice, to my best friend was with the pastor's kid, by the way. That's who I got in all the trouble with, too, was the pastor's kid. The most unruly kid I knew growing up, the pastor's kid. I've told the stories about how the pastor caught us up in the rafters in the middle of church. Everyone who was listening to him preach thought he was gesturing towards God. What he was gesturing toward was looking up. We had the big vaulted ceiling and had a vent in there, and you could see my little head and his son's little head peering out. And he started talking about God's wrath and then pointed right at us and looked at us. That was me growing up. I grew up in church. But then as a teenager, I fell away. Statistically, that's what happens. What's also the one good thing that we can say from that, hey, but if they got that foundation in church as a child and they fall away from church, what happens is when most people, when they start having children and raising families of their own, they come back to church. And the reason they come back to church is they realize, I don't have any foundation. I don't know what I'm doing. Well, I remember growing up going to church. That was a good thing for me. That kept me out of a lot of trouble. I'll start bringing my own children back. But the problem is, like I said, my generation, we rejected God's truth. We wanted to live in opposition to it. We never got that firm foundation in it. And then we're trying to teach the next generation. And we just don't have that firm foundation. We've become afraid to teach our kids absolutes for fear they'll reject us. Absolutes for things like, you'll know you hear us in hearsay. Abortion. It's wrong. Period. Well, you hear people, well, what about when this happens? That is a tragic, horrible, horrible thing. It's still wrong. Just like when I said, hey, stealing the can of dog food because my family's starving. Is it wrong? Yeah, still wrong. Same thing. We're going to teach absolutes. Abortion's wrong. Gay marriage, wrong. Do I love those people? Yes, I love those people. Hate the sin, love the sinner. There's wrong. So many times nowadays we're afraid to teach our kids absolutes. And trust me, society will jump in on that and they're going to fill in with everything that they want. You've never seen a stronger push than you've seen right now. For all these things. Now the biggest thing, the trans or, the alphabet people. LBGTI, question mark, smiley face, and backslash. I don't know. They keep coming up with more. I heard it the other day, LGBTIQN or something. I'm like, I don't know what that stands for. Just pick a letter for Christ. Pretty soon. Our problem is we've gotten busy building our careers and buying things, but not building our children spiritually. This nonchalant commitment. We've had a nonchalant commitment to church. We've had a nonchalant commitment to Christ. And our kids have learned that same nonchalant commitment. The reason I say is the American family is falling apart because of this. Teens will not pursue a God that their parents are not pursuing. See, God's designed us to be the leaders in the home. And I don't care how independent your child is or one young man or woman is or how driven they are. They're not going to pursue anything that you don't say is important and you're pursuing yourself. They're just not going to do it. In many quote-unquote Christian homes, God rates right up there with Little League practice, piano lessons, night classes, hunting, or whatever your thing is, and is often pushed aside just as quickly by that same list. It's a nonchalant Christianity because we haven't made it a priority. It's amazing me, and we talked about it this morning. I said something about it to Glenn. I said, it's funny how we don't have energy and time to do things. Like, if you guys don't know me, I work at night, and it's a good thing that I work at night because I hate to get up early. I mean, I just hate it. I just wake up angry. But when it's hunting season, I can get up at 5 in the morning. I'm bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and the happiest guy in the world. Woohoo, we're going hunting. I get up, put on clothes. It's like 30 degrees out. It's freezing cold, and I go out at 5 in the morning when no sane person should be awake. And I love it because I've made that a priority. We always have time for those things that we think are important, but all of a sudden it's funny, we get to the time, well, you know, that time spending time with God, or church isn't really that important. I can do church anywhere, which you can. Will you? Probably not. Probably not. And that goes back to the forsaking themselves, gathering together. There's a reason that so throughout the Bible it talks about the local independent church. Why? When you make that a priority and to gather together, you will spend that time. And trust me, the devil will attack it. We talked about it this morning, so the men and I said it's amazing how I can get up every morning and go to work. But I have to get up and come to church, and all of a sudden I keep thinking to myself, well, you know, I could sleep in. Do any of us think that when going to work? I think it every day, actually. I don't ever want to go. But I get up every day and I go. But for some reason, all of a sudden, it's an option on Sunday, where I really should have been working all week to get to that. So I can start out right. God is often treated as a hobby that is only as it's incredibly difficult to establish spiritual principles that are foreign in the home. If we don't set those spiritual principles in our home, it's almost impossible to establish them. So look at more often than not, the church can only reinforce what your kids learn at home. That's why I talked about. Look, we had a child raised in the church. I still remember mom was looking at me going, I can't believe you do this. He was raised in the church. Yeah, he was raised in the church, but you weren't. You weren't there. And this isn't what he was seeing at home. I can tell you from personal experience why he walked away from church was because what was going on at home did not mirror what he was being taught in church. So it was either love church and hate his parents, or love his parents and reject the church. He did what almost every kid do. We love our parents. And to love his parents, because his mind couldn't fathom this dysfunctional thing that was going on. Just like, hey, you can have an abortion, but I can also make you stand trial for killing an unborn child. That's dysfunctional. It doesn't make any sense. His brain said, I can't do this. So he had to choose one. My whole hope is that he'll at least follow statistics, and that as his life goes on and he starts a relationship and wants to raise a family, he's going to look back and be like, you know what? I did grow up in church. I did know better. And I want stability for my kids that I'm not providing. Maybe I need to go back. That's the one thing I can hope for right now. The devil's coming out. He said, look, I'm going to attack the family. The family is the basis where all these things are taught and they're learned and we can implement. That's what gives us these skills, this armor to go up against Satan. This last part I'll talk about. Living preemptively is a spiritual battle. It's a spiritual battle. All this is talking about the family because this is going to set the stage for how we live preemptively. Little story behind it. Throughout the 1990s, there are a few men in our wise men in our nation warned us that we needed to be on the lookout and taking preventative steps to dissuade a whole new kind of enemy threat. That enemy threat we now know as the modern day terrorist. all throughout the 90s. If you're in the military, you'd hear about it. Hey, we need to be ready to combat this new threat. Why? Cold War's over. It's not Soviets versus America. It's going to be a whole new threat. Well, come September 11th, it reinforced what they'd been talking about. See, all throughout the 90s, though, the majority of people, you're just being crazy. You guys are just being too extreme. You're just being paranoid. Everybody in the world loves Americans. By the way, if you ever travel the world, you're going to find out, no, it's not true. They envy us, but they don't like us. Many people thought these guys were just being needlessly paranoid, and needlessly aggressive. After September 11th, all that changed. Now, one of the coolest days in American history that maybe a lot of people have forgotten was September 12th. And the reason I say that is September 12th, there was a flag in front of every house, and everybody was so proud to be an American. They were like, bring it. I love it. You know, I'm a military guy, so what do I think? Yeah, bring it. Let's go shoot something. Point me the right direction. What we found out during that time is after that happened, all these military leaders figured out, hey, it's too late to stop that attack. We can't go to the point of the attack and fight the enemy. They're not going to be there. What we had to do was come out with a whole new war. Our military leaders knew that this new war would have to be fought through preemption. See, what we'd have to do is go find the enemy, root them out, and destroy them before they could ever attack us. See, that's actually a preemptive war. So we're going to do everything we can to protect ourselves. And not only are we going to protect ourselves, we're going to go out and look to where the enemy is, where he's building up, where he's getting ready. We're going to eliminate them before they can even have a chance to fight us. See, one thing, I spent 20 years in the Marine Corps. What you'll find out with the U.S. military, we are horrible defenders. We have one of the worst defensive militaries there is. We have the best offensive military there is. Our whole job is to do one thing. You hit me, I'm going to your house. I'm going to beat you up there. I'm not doing it here. Our job, we go after anyone that's going to attack us. We go look for them. That's a preemptive war. Now it's funny, God's Word calls us to preemptive Christian living. God's Word calls us to do this. One of my favorite verses, the teens get tired of hearing me say this one, but 1 Peter 5:8. Be sober and be vigilant, for your adversary the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about, seeking whom he may devour. Being preemptive. We need to be looking for those things. Looking for those things that are come after us. This is why. Understand there's an enemy out there. Understand something's looking for us. The devil is out there as a roaring lion, seeking who he may devour. He doesn't take time off. He's just waiting for you to put your guard down. And one of the things to talk about preemptive Christian living. Preemptive Christian living is really one of those things that it's those lists of things that we do and those lists of things we don't do. Many times in a Christian life, and that's why, you get that, oh, they're so Christian. They have this look, or hey, they have these things. No, it's not bad. There are standards. Why do we have standards? Why do we set things in our lives that we don't do? To be preemptive. One of the ones I've taught here many times, I still remember sitting under preaching, and people talking about, hey, don't even give the always happens. You come up here and your brain goes blank. You don't want to give the perception that you're doing anything wrong or evil. The appearance of evil. Thank you. My brain left for a minute. And I remember sitting in that and thinking to myself, you know what? One of those things that I need to do, there was a gal that I worked with, I was still active duty. We'd go and her and I we just got along real good. Nice gal, her and I just got along. And everyone's like, oh, is there something going on with you guys? We're like, no. We just happened to get along well. And one of the things is we'd have these all-hands meetings and formations or meetings you have to go to. We all have to get there. So many times there'd be a bunch of us that would ride together. Many times I'd taken her and we'd go together to these things. And that actually started raising the questions, why are you guys always hanging out all the time? And I said, you know what? That can give the appearance of evil. I'm not going to give a woman a ride in my car anymore unless my wife is with me. I just won't do it. Now, of course, 2 days later, what happens is we have an all-hands formation, and we live in Fallon in the middle of the desert, and what's it do? It starts pouring rain. I had just made this decision that I'm not going to take any woman along with me, alone in my car. So what do? Run to the gal that I'm friends with, that I get along with great. It's pouring rain, and I'm going to this meeting that we're all having to go to. It's several miles away, and I see her in the pouring rain, and I drive by and go, and keep driving. So why? Because the devil's going to test it if I was going to keep doing it. And I had to go to her later and be like, hey, I just want you to know I didn't do it to be a jerk. Although that was the initial thinking, what she was thinking, like, what is your problem? What a jerk, you left me out in the pouring rain. No, I did it because I made this promise I will not do this anymore, and I don't want to give this appearance of evil. I want people saying things about you and saying things about me. And if they saw that I was willing to leave you out in the pouring rain, they're going to know there ain't nothing going on between us, because if there was, that would have ended it right there, right? And she said, well, that's true. It's perfect. That was a standard I set. Now, the funniest thing is, whenever you set a standard, oh, devil's going to test it. Test it right away. Are you really willing to do that? Are you willing to be the jerk? Well, anyone who knows me well enough, ask my daughter, I'm always willing to be the jerk. So that shouldn't be a problem. Preemptive living. Part of the reason we're doing these lessons is so we can identify the devil's attacks, the devil's tactics, and learn to avoid his traps. Root out those things in our life that might give him a foothold. See, both parents and teens must live preemptively in order to fight the unseen enemy. Both parents and teens must live preemptively in order to fight the unseen enemy. I'm going to go back, and there's something I skipped, and there's a note that I put in here myself, and myself to come back. There's one of those things we were looking at. We were looking at the family, and we look at the downturn of the family, and one of the reasons we spend all this time talking about the family is because I'm talking about the next generation. And even for our teens, you're going to grow up and have families. You're going to be raising the next generation. And one of the things that happens, the future family will be determined by how the next generation, or how you guys define family, marriage, sex, and love. The future of the family will be determined by how you... The future of the nation will be determined how you guys define right from wrong. The future of the church will be determined on your personal faith, convictions, and commitment. Their lives are really going to be determined who God is in their life. Is he going to be a casual thing? I'll be honest. My generation dropped the ball. We rejected God's word. Comes to your generation, we didn't teach you right. Now, what are you going to do with it? Because the future of the church is yours. It's not mine. I'm already too old. I'm on my way out. I'm not sure where I lapped everybody. I was one young man. Now I'm the old man. It's a weird thing. So both parents and teens must live preemptively in order to fight the unseen enemy. Preemptive parents. The enemy is there. Suspect is have intelligence, and then strike preemptive base of operations. Taking action that makes it pointless or impossible for the devil to do what he intended. See, it's funny. Have you ever had someone who's plotting against you? Who plans to do something wrong against you? And you just call them out and be like, hey, by the way, I know what you're doing. Oh. Hey, I know you're going to try to tell the boss that I came in late today. Just so you know, I already talked to him and told him I was late today, so you don't have to waste your breath. Oh. Take the sting out. Do all these things. It's funny, my time in the Marine Corps, one of the things I had to do was I worked in CMCC, which is Classified Material Control Center. One of the things I did at Miramar is I worked in the Classified Material Control Center. Now what it is you're a librarian for classified stuff. That's all it is. The only thing that was cool, I was like a corporal and I had a huge office. I had an office bigger than most of the officers. They used to come into my office to get coffee in the morning, which made my life really good because I got pretty much whatever I wanted. Because they had to come to me to get all their classified traffic. So it was one of those fun things. One of the things I always thought was funny about that job, one of the things when you run the CMCC, the Classified Material Control Center, you have to have these emergency procedures set out. And they're called burn procedures. So if Red Star cluster goes off, enemies in the wire, we're getting attacked, hey, you take all this stuff outside, dude. Here's the gas, here's the burn barrel, here's the axe. You break up this computer, you take this and you light all this stuff on fire so the enemy can't get it. Which I always laughed about. Because in my job, almost everything we had in there in the Classified Material Control Center was about our missions, about how to defend our base, and what we're going to do to fight the enemy. Now, if the enemy's here, taking over the base, why do I need to destroy the information? They already got it. They already figured it out. It's not going to do them any good. They already got it. As a parent, our job in preemptive living is to warn our kids, hey, here's the traps, here's the pitfalls, here's this, here's that. Satan lays it out and they're like, so what? I already know about it. I already know what your plan is. It doesn't do any good. That's what preemptive living does. It doesn't mean that, hey, it's not going to come, but it's going to take that sting out. I know what your plan is. I'm going to blow this up. I'm not going to set it. One of those things is preemptive parent, and there's dating. Hey, are there rules? You're darn right. Are you going to be anywhere alone? No. I'm going to be there with you. But don't you trust your kids? No. Not at all. I don't trust me, let alone them. I teach the teens. I love the teens. I'm a grown man. I can't trust myself. They have teenage boys. You know, if you go and you take a testosterone reading on any of those men in here, all those teenage boys will be running about double the amount of testosterone in their body that I'm running. I've had a lifetime to learn how to adapt to it, too. They don't even know how to deal with it. And they got double running through their system. Do you trust them? No! I don't trust them. I love them, and that's why I'm going to be there. I'm going to set some preemptive guards and not allow some certain things in my life. That's our job. One for teens. Teens need to know, understand, hey, they're vulnerable. Understand you're vulnerable. Look, one of those things, I laugh about it, one of those things I had to do in CMCC, we kept all the stuff of where the enemy and what we do and what we do to fight them. You know the number one thing we do to get all that information? We attack ourselves. We learn our vulnerabilities. We learn, hey, where can they get in? What can we best do to fortify this? What can we best do to take care of these things? You know, many times we look at like the old cities, these old castles, right? They built up, and one of the things they were built up for was for siege warfare. And the best castles had really thick walls, they had natural springs inside, and they had a bunch of food, and they had ways that they could live in there with their gates closed. Why? Because that's your most vulnerable thing. One of the things you find in the military, one of the most vulnerable things you look at is your food and your fuel. Fuel for people and fuel for vehicles. Those are the number one things you need. Beyond that, you can pretty much do whatever you want. One of the things you learn in the Marine Corps, they say beans, bullets, and Band-Aids. As long as you got food, as long as you got bullets, and you got a Band-Aid, because, hey, that's all the more injured you're authorized to get. Motrin can fix a broken leg. Seen it done. Teens need to know that they're vulnerable. See, many times we always say, hey, yeah, those bad things happen. Statistics are, but that happens to someone else. No, it doesn't. It happens to you. We always think, it's like, oh, well, that person's a horrible sinner. My sin's not that bad. It's always that other guy. The reality, no, it's not. Is Satan going to come after you? Yeah. What's going to work on you might not be the same thing that works on me, but he's going to get in there either way. Know we're vulnerable. Set up those preemptive things in your life. To know that you're vulnerable, seek to protect themselves within the safe borders of parental authority and the Word of God. Now, I can tell you this one, I don't think my kids will get upset, because I know they've done it. They've been asked to, hey, do you want to go out? Do you want to go do these things? Or maybe do you want to go spend time? And, hey, let's go to a movie. My daughter will tell you right now, she might not want to go, but what she'll say? Oh, my dad won't let me. Here's the reality. She didn't want to go. But she is more than comfortable to land her at that parental authority and say, oh, yeah, my dad won't let me. Oh, no, now there's a 14-year-old kid who thinks I'm a jerk. Woohoo! So don't care. I tell my kid, dude, you can blame stuff on me all day. Why? Because you don't feel comfortable enough, you just blame it on Dad. Well, you don't let your kids do anything. Yeah, you're right. My job is to raise them and do things my way. Do things God's way. What does God's Word have to say about it? Well, I really don't know. Well, you defer to Dad. Or, hey, I'm not really comfortable with that. Fine, blame it on me. I don't care. We need kids to understand that. Hey, I don't think this is right. What did Mom and Dad say? What would God say? Well, my friends are going to make fun of me. Then tell them my mom and dad won't let me. No kid can argue with my mom and dad won't let me. They just can't. We'll do it anyway. No, I like living. So all the time, man, we live in the desert. People disappear every day. We might go on a special camping trip. I tell that story because the guy I worked with, his kids turned him in to Child Protective Services. They were just mad. Good father. Good guy. Turned him in to Child Protective Services. Well, he got out. Then he took his kids on a camping trip. Says, oh, you think I'm bad? Let's go to the middle of nowhere. See how much you love me then. We don't want to be here. Go. All of a sudden, they loved Dad because Dad knew how to survive. Dad was also a survival instructor in the Marine Corps. So when I say he took them camping, it was survival school. They went out there with a pocket knife and they said, make a shelter. Learn how to live. I said, why? He said, I loved them. I hadn't taught them what they should. And then they also learned that, hey, I need to follow underneath the authority of my dad, because what they found out when they were living out, trying to live in the wilderness out on their own, without Dad's protection and Dad's authority, they weren't going to make it. So what do you mean? Dad knew how to trap. Dad knew what to eat. Dad knew how to make shelter. They put themselves underneath that. We need to put ourselves underneath that authority now. But hey, I don't always know everything. I need to defer to those that have been placed there by God in charge of me. Not all of us have a family. Not all of us have a mom and dad. I just said the statistics. One of the guys I worked with, I just said, hey, as a black man, you're 70% chance that you grew up in a single-parent home. And he goes, yep, I'm one of them. Never had a father in my life. I never had a dad. But what did you have? I had uncles. I had school teachers. I had scoutmasters. I had people in my life who filled that role, who were mentors to me, who made sure I was staying out of trouble, who were trying to make sure I was raised correctly, so I could do things the way God would have it. He's a devout Christian man now. Many of us in this room are going to be that person to someone else. We need to be willing to fill that role of parent. be willing to put ourselves underneath the authority of others. See, Satan's the master tactician. He's had, since the beginning, the entire time the earth's been here, he's been honing his skills. Now, all this was talking about being a fisherman. You ever gone out with a master fisherman? I told the kids this morning. I remember going out with a man, a family friend, and he would go out and he was a master fisherman. And it used to drive me crazy because he would go out, he would bait my hook. I had everything identical to him. And he would tell me where to cast. And I'd be out there for a half hour, 45 minutes. I mean, not a bite, not a nibble, not anything. He would go out there one cast and hook a fish. In the same spot. Well, just put it right there and drag it real slow. Like this? Yeah, just like that. Okay. 45 minutes later, nothing. Well, let me see. Here you go. Master fisherman. Don't know. Like the fish saw him cast out, they jumped out of the water and just bit the hook. Satan is a master fisherman when it comes to us. We need to know to recognize his tactics, to put ourselves in that preemptive Christian life to protect us from those lures he's going to put in our lives. Put those limits up around us. I mean, that's why everyone talks about, well, you Christians, you got to, only thing the Bible does is tell me what I can't do. 2.5 times more it tells you what you're supposed to do than what you can't do. But we don't do those either. Because if you do the things it says you to do, you don't have time to do the things it tells you not to do. It's one of those amazing things. But that's where some of those Christian standards come in. Why don't you guys do this? Why don't you allow your kids to go out and date? Why don't you do that? Preemptive living. There are things I don't want to have happen to me. I got those guards up. I can see it coming. Say, oh, I'm going to use this to hook them. Yeah, I know that's what you're going to try to use to hook me. That's why I'm not allowing it in my life. If I have that proclivity to be like, hey, there's a good-looking woman, well, guess what? Whoop! I ain't looking that direction. Why? That could be used to snag me. I'm going to look over here. Hey, look, oh, look at that. It's pretty over there today. I did that with the teens when we were at Great America. There was a lot of time the boys were going, hey, look at that cloud. There were a couple times I talked to the boys and I go, look over there. What are you looking at? Nothing. Just keep looking. Okay, now you can look at me. Why? Because there's things we just need to set those limits in our life. We need to live preemptively as Christians. We need to get back to that strong Christian family, those things that God would have us to do. Because the whole idea behind this is that the next generation is going to set up what the church is, what our nation is, what the family is. And if we're not building those things now and teaching those spiritual truths, they're just not going to get them. And if they don't have those spiritual truths, they're going to get snagged by those lures that Satan's putting out. So that's what I have this evening, just the whole idea of hook, line, and sinker that I think next week Pastor will be teaching, and we're going to be talking about specifically some of those things that Satan uses. Some of those specific lures. You know, you guys ever opened up a tackle box? And the really good fishermen, they got it's like, this big, and open up, and there's all sorts of colorful, fancy things that make noise, and I don't know what any of them do. I'm not a fisherman. But they got it all. Hey, if the weather's this way, if the water temperature's this, if this is doing this, use this one. Use this one. This one will work good. Satan's going to do that same thing. Pastor's going to talk about some of those specific things Satan's going to use to attack you and attack your life, to try to get that foothold in your life. Because all Satan wants is that little bit. If I can get you to go, hey, here's my standard. If Satan can get you to go, well, this once, I'll just come here. That becomes your new normal. And he'll wait. And then later he'll bring something new, and you're like, okay, well, I mean, that's just one little step. That's one little step. That's one little step. How did the church get away from God? Well, we took this one little step. We wanted to try this thing that a lot of people liked. Yeah, it's not really biblical, but people liked it. That's why you go to some of these churches nowadays, it's a rock concert. Now, there's nothing wrong with music and people wanting to come in, but if you're not teaching the Bible, what's the point? It's a social club, not a church. We want to make sure that we set those standards for ourselves so we don't get lured away. Because, hey, Satan says this, I got all the time in the world. He's not going anywhere. We are. He'll wait. He just wants that little step in our lives. So that's what we're going to talk about next week. Thank you for your attention. Let's close in prayer this evening, and then we'll be dismissed. Pastor, you want to close us in prayer?